Thinking about getting a studio apartment? Here are some pros and cons as you're making that decision. Let's talk about what a studio is. A studio apartment is typically an apartment that is between 300 and 500 square feet, which isn't a lot of space. And typically, apart from the kitchen and your bathroom, you only have one room of living space, so there's not a separate bedroom. Now, why would that be a beneficial thing for you? Well, first of all, most studio apartments are anywhere from $100 to $300 less expensive per month than a typical one bedroom where there's a separate bedroom and more area in the apartment. Not only is the apartment smaller and the rent is less, but think about your utilities. You're going to use fewer utilities and you're going to have fewer expenses because you're not going to have as much space to heat or cool or light. The economic advantages are pretty substantial if you're just starting out or you're just looking for a place to crash at the end of the day and you're not planning to spend a lot of time in your apartment. Another great benefit of a studio apartment is that if you are a person who doesn't need a lot of space, maybe you came from a home where you had shared space with somebody else, or you don't have a lot of possessions, and maybe a one-bedroom apartment feels a little too big for you, a studio apartment is going to be perfect for you, because of the advantages and benefits I spoke of earlier, but also because it's going to feel more like what you're used to and what you've grown up with. So that's another great benefit of a studio apartment for someone who doesn't have a lot of possessions, who is not used to a big space and would just like their own space. They might not be big, but they're nice and cozy. Now, what are the disadvantages of having a studio apartment? First of all, the space can be a disadvantage. If you're an accumulator, you're going to have to think about what you're going to keep in the apartment and what you're not going to keep in the apartment. If you're thinking, well, I'll just go and get a storage room or storage space, storage locker somewhere, I would caution you that that's actually going to work against your desire, if you're looking at a studio, to save money, because that means that the money you're trying to save now, you're going to spend it protecting your stuff in a storage place. It's just a thought. Totally your decision. And that gets us to the whole idea of possessions. Typically, most people that are looking at studio apartments, unless they're minimalists, have to look at getting rid of up to 50% of their possessions in order to fit comfortably in their apartment. I recently had a friend who was moving from a one-bedroom apartment to a studio for economic reasons, and it was very difficult for that individual to decide what she couldn't take with her and what she could take with her. I'm happy to say she made some wise decisions. Now, if that's not an issue for you, no problem. Keep in mind, most studios, people aren't living in them for a long period of time. So if you can live without some stuff for a year, go for it. Now, are you considering getting a roommate, or maybe you're going to get married or have a significant other move in with you? A studio apartment is not going to be conducive to a good relationship nor to your mental health. Why? Because there's not going to be your personal space. And that, we're finding out more and more, is extremely important for our mental well-being. And so typically you can have a roommate in a studio apartment. However, keep in mind that personal space is going to be pretty much non-existent, and you need to see how important that is for you. Last but not least, consider that if you're working from home, if you're a person who works in your home or work from home, it's going to be really difficult. Again, this is getting back to the whole idea of mental well-being, to separate your work from relaxation time. Your studio apartment isn't going to be conducive to having parties or having friends over because of the limited amount of furniture and the limited space that you have in the apartment. These are some of the constraints that you need to keep in mind when you're looking at a studio apartment. That is the advantages and disadvantages of a studio apartment. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell so that you get notified of more content just like this.